So what's going on, guys? Mr. Dalek JD here, and in this video we're going to be talking about a cipher found in GOROD KROVI, which very much sounds like it links in with the Mob of the Dead plane. Now, we've seen the Mob of the Dead plane a ton of times now, besides in Mob of the Dead. We've seen it in Shadows of Evil, we've seen it in The Giant, we also see it in Zetsubou no Shima. Now, we don't see it in Dark Eisendrache, but we don't see it either in GOROD KROVI, but this cipher is pretty much a very blunt explanation as to how this plane could be, and could be from one of the character perspectives of the Mob of the Dead characters. Now, this is a cipher that was solved by Kalanine. This code is actually written in Zulu, so if you can speak Zulu, then what you're seeing on screen probably makes a ton of sense, and the Google Translate description for this doesn't make a ton of sense. Now, there's a Twitter user called Lemon Squeezy who has written and translated this because he can speak Zulu and got a much better translation than what Google Translate does. But big shout out to Kalanine. I found this over on CallOfDutyZombies.com. You can check out the thread to that down below and a link to Lemon Squeezy's Twitter as well. But this translates to: it was a strange flight, the plane crashed. We passed through time and space, in a way, flying over areas that shouldn't have been there. There was no sign of any remains. I do not know where it landed. Honest. Now, to me, this could be Mob of the Dead, but this could also be a reference to Brock and Gary from Shangri-La that we heard from in Zetsubou no Shima. Now, for all we know, they were on a plane on their way to Shangri-La, and sadly they died, so there'd be no real way of them to write this message, which is why I believe it to be more along the lines of Mob of the Dead, and it also leans in very well to explain maybe some of the appearances of it that we're seeing. So throughout playing Shadows of Evil, where we see the plane fly over the Giant where it's already crashed, and then in Zetsubou no Shima where we can see it flying over, it sounds like this whole time that flight of the Mob of the Dead plane is passing through time and space, flying over areas that shouldn't have been there. These areas pretty much could be Shadows of Evil, the Giant, as well as Zetsubou no Shima. And what's weird is it says there was no sign of any remains. Now, it sounds like as if it's the perspective of someone that we should know about that can't for some reason find any remains of the crashed plane. It's just disappeared, and he does not know where it's landed. Now, we have no idea where this cipher was written on either. This could very well lead onto the plane crashed in the Giant, because the other maps that we see the Mob of the Dead plane in, it's flying over that area. It's not crashing, it's not landing, it's just simply flying over those areas. So it's definitely passing through time and space, and it seems that the Giant is probably the end point where the plane has crashed, and there was no signs of any remains, and the person does not know where the plane landed. Again, the Giant is the only map where we see a plane that's actually landed. We don't ever see it land in Zetsubou, we don't see it land in Shadows of Evil, we just see it fly over, which is extremely interesting. Now, how this plane is doing this, we have absolutely no idea, because in Mob of the Dead, we only ever see the plane make that trip to the Golden Gate Bridge, where all the players crash onto that bridge and then enter Purgatory again. So to me, this sounds like the Mob of the Dead plane is really in its own sort of time bubble here. It's passing through time and space. Now, the Mob of the Dead crew could be on that plane. It would maybe make some sort of sense as to why we have blood vials, why the characters know Nikolai, or so we think anyway, as well as the references that are made in Shadows of Evil towards those characters. It's just all very interesting, and yet even more confusing at the same time, because this sort of leads on to explain why we see the plane, but it still doesn't explain how the plane exists and how it makes sense. All we know is that it can travel through time and space. How, we do not know, flying over areas that shouldn't be there, and there's no signs of any remains, and the person writing this does not know where it landed. Now, this person writing it may not even be a Mob of the Dead character. It could be someone entirely different, and then we get the question of how on earth are they flying the plane? How did they get onto Alcatraz in that specific universe to fly the plane? Why did they fly it? There's just so many questions to ask here. I'd love for you guys to let me know down below in the comment section, what do you think this cipher means? Do you think it represents the planes that we see flying in all the maps and it crashed in the Giant? It sounds very plausible to me, but it still doesn't make any sense. We do not know how this plane exists. Maybe DLC 4 Revelations will finally be the place where we finally see it, and it does make a ton of sense. But this is the only cipher written about it. It's the only cipher written about a flight, so we can assume that if there's a plane involved, of course it is the Mob of the Dead plane. But if you guys enjoyed the video, drop it a like rating, make sure to subscribe, and I'll catch you on another one very, very soon.